"We received your message. We understand." Those words, spoken softly but firmly, marked a dramatic turning point in the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. Late Saturday night, Savannah Guthrie and her siblings released a short but emotionally heavy video on social media. In it, they directly addressed whoever they believe is holding their mother. The message was simple, desperate, and unmistakable. They are willing to pay to have her returned. The exhaustion on their faces said more than the words ever could. After more than a week of sleepless nights, unanswered questions, and relentless public scrutiny, the family appeared to reach a breaking point. Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, vanished from her Tucson area home during the early hours of February 1st. Since then, the case has exploded into a national and now international obsession. What makes this moment different is the family's apparent acceptance of the alleged ransom demands. For days, law enforcement and media outlets have cautiously referenced mysterious ransom notes sent to television stations and celebrity news platforms. Until now, the family had not publicly acknowledged any intent to comply. That changed overnight. According to investigators, at least 2 ransom deadlines were mentioned in these messages. One reportedly passed late last week. Another is said to be approaching within hours. While the actual notes have not been released publicly, bits and pieces have emerged, enough to convince both the FBI and the family that the threat must be taken seriously. One report claims the notes describe Nancy as alive, frightened, and aware of her situation. Another allegedly warns that there will be no negotiation. All demand payment through cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin, a choice that raises as many questions as it answers. At the same time the family's video went live, something else happened that caught the attention of reporters on the ground. Late that night, law enforcement officers were seen entering the home of Savannah's sister, Annie Guthrie. Cameras captured flashes of light through the windows as investigators spent several hours inside. No explanation was given. This detail matters because Annie's home was the last confirmed place Nancy visited before she disappeared. She had dinner there, spent time with family, and was later driven back to her own residence. Who drove her home has never been publicly confirmed. Authorities insist they have no suspect and no person of interest. Yet the activity suggests the investigation is far from static. Between the family's willingness to pay, a ticking deadline, and renewed police activity at a key location, the case appears to be entering its most critical phase yet. And as we'll see next, one local TV station has now revealed a number, a ransom figure so large it changes everything. Rehook. If millions of dollars are really on the line, what happens when the deadline hits, and who's actually watching the money trail? As the Guthrie family's plea echoed across social media, a stunning new detail surfaced from local media in Arizona, a possible ransom amount. One Tucson television station reported that it received a message early last week demanding $6 million to be paid in Bitcoin, with a deadline set for Monday at 5 p.m. Another station claims it later received a follow-up note stating there would be no negotiation. If true, this transforms the case from a mysterious disappearance into a high-stakes financial crime, one that may already be unfolding in real time. According to multiple reports, the first wave of ransom messages was sent not to the family directly, but to media organizations. That unusual choice immediately raised red flags. Why contact television stations instead of law enforcement or relatives? Investigators believe the sender may have been trying to ensure the message was taken seriously, casting a wide net to force attention. TMZ later confirmed it received one of the notes and was able to verify that the Bitcoin wallet address provided was real, though they declined to share sensitive details at the FBI's request. Still, one major question remains unanswered. Are the Guthrie family's videos responding to these same ransom notes or to private communications the public knows nothing about? Experts suggest the latter is very possible. The language used by Savannah and her siblings, "We received your message," implies direct contact. That single line has fueled widespread speculation that a new communication occurred behind the scenes. Meanwhile, the FBI has remained tight-lipped. Officials have acknowledged the existence of ransom-related material but have not confirmed authenticity or origin. What they have confirmed is this: the situation is being treated as credible. The use of Bitcoin is especially telling. While many assume cryptocurrency is untraceable, that belief is only partly true. Every transaction is permanently recorded on the blockchain, visible to anyone who knows where to look. If millions suddenly appear in a wallet, investigators around the world will see it instantly. That raises another possibility, one that could explain the family's sudden urgency. If Nancy is elderly, vulnerable, and dependent on medication, time may be more dangerous than money. Waiting for a dramatic rescue could carry risks the family is no longer willing to take. At the same time, paying a ransom doesn't end an investigation. Law enforcement has made clear in similar cases that even if money is exchanged, the search for those responsible does not stop. As the deadline approaches, pressure is building on all sides: the family, investigators, and whoever sent the messages. Each hour that passes increases the stakes and the consequences of a single wrong move. Rehook. But if the money is paid, can the kidnappers actually use it, or will it lead investigators straight to them? At first glance, demanding ransom in Bitcoin might seem like a perfect crime. No names, no banks, no paper trail. In reality, it may be the opposite. Every Bitcoin transaction is recorded on a public ledger. While wallet owners aren't identified by name, their activity is permanently visible. If $6 million suddenly lands in a wallet, analysts, journalists, and law enforcement agencies across the globe will notice. Experts say that's where the real danger begins for the criminals. Turning Bitcoin into usable cash is far more complicated than clicking a button. Any attempt to convert it through a legitimate exchange requires identity verification. Even using underground methods, the movement of funds can often be traced through patterns, timing, and linked transactions. Federal agencies have become increasingly effective at following these trails. In several high-profile cases over the past year, authorities successfully seized cryptocurrency long after it was paid, sometimes returning it to victims. This reality may explain why the alleged kidnappers limited communication. The fewer messages sent, the fewer digital fingerprints left behind. Each new email, form submission, or message risks exposing location data, VPN errors, or behavioral clues. Some investigators believe this suggests a level of sophistication. Not amateurs, but someone who understands both technology and human psychology, someone betting that fear will override caution. Meanwhile, the Guthrie family faces an impossible choice. Paying the ransom may increase the odds of Nancy's safe return, but it also risks encouraging further demands, or worse, being manipulated by someone who doesn't actually control her fate. There's also another unsettling possibility. The person demanding money may not be the same person responsible for Nancy's disappearance. In chaotic, highly public cases, opportunists sometimes exploit tragedy for profit. Law enforcement must consider every angle while revealing almost nothing publicly, and then there's surveillance. Returning Nancy safely would require movement. A vehicle, a location, a drop-off. In a city filled with cameras, license plate readers, and federal agents, that step alone could unravel everything. That's why some believe the case is approaching a breaking point. Either the exchange happens, or it doesn't. Either Nancy comes home, or investigators pivot to a very different phase of the case. What makes the next development even more intriguing is what happened quietly, late at night, while the world focused on the ransom. Rehook. Why did deputies suddenly spend hours inside Annie Guthrie's home? And what were they really looking for? Just hours after the Guthrie family released their emotional video, reporters noticed something unusual. Deputies arriving at Annie Guthrie's house late Saturday night. They stayed for nearly 3 hours. From outside, cameras captured brief flashes of light through the windows, suggesting photographs were being taken inside. Yet no crime scene tape, no hazmat suits, and no public explanation followed. That silence has fueled speculation. Annie's home is significant for one reason. It was the last confirmed place Nancy Guthrie was seen. She had dinner there, spent the evening with family, and was later driven home. Authorities have never disclosed who drove her. Sheriff's officials have repeatedly stated they have no suspect and no person of interest. Still, renewed activity at this location raises questions about whether investigators are revisiting early assumptions. Adding to the tension is the visible strain on local law enforcement. The sheriff overseeing the case has faced intense criticism over initial handling, transparency, and communication. At the same time, federal agencies, including the FBI, are deeply involved, bringing additional resources and pressure. Then came a surprising political moment. Over the weekend, former President Donald Trump was asked about the case while traveling. His response was brief but explosive. He claimed investigators had very strong clues and suggested answers could come soon. That statement alone reignited speculation that authorities may be closer to a breakthrough than they're letting on. Yet, despite all the attention, one thing remains consistent. The inner circle of the Guthrie family has remained remarkably quiet. No leaks, no off-the-record hints, no visible fractures. Experts believe this may be intentional, a strategy coordinated with federal advisors to avoid disrupting delicate negotiations or tipping off whoever is watching. As Monday's deadline approaches, the case sits at a crossroads. Every development feels connected, yet nothing is confirmed. The silence is as loud as the headlines, and that leads to the final unsettling question: what happens next? Rehook. When the deadline arrives, will it bring resolution or expose a truth no one is ready for? As the clock ticks toward the reported deadline, the fate of Nancy Guthrie hangs in the balance. If the ransom is paid, there are only a few possible outcomes, and none are simple. Best case: Nancy is returned safely, and the investigation quietly shifts toward tracking the money and identifying those responsible. Worst case: nothing happens at all. Law enforcement officials stress that paying a ransom does not end an investigation. In fact, it often intensifies it. Every transaction, every movement, every digital footprint becomes part of a growing web of evidence. There's also the possibility that authorities already know more than they can say. In complex cases like this, investigators sometimes withhold information to protect a larger strategy, or to avoid putting a victim at further risk. Some experts believe the family's video was not just a plea, but a response to a communication the public has never seen. Others argue it was a calculated move to buy time or force a reaction. The truth is, no one outside a very small circle knows for sure. What is clear is this: the next move will define the entire case. Whether it's a transfer of funds, a sudden break in the investigation, or the safe return of Nancy Guthrie, the outcome will ripple far beyond Tucson. For now, authorities continue to urge anyone with information to come forward. Tips remain open, resources remain deployed, and a family waits, hoping that their willingness to give up everything might bring their mother home. Until that moment comes, every development, every silence, and every rumor will be scrutinized. Because when a case reaches this stage, there's no going back, only forward into answers that could arrive at any moment. Final rehook. And when the deadline passes, will it mark the end of the nightmare, or the beginning of something far darker? As of today, the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie remains an active and unresolved investigation, but several key developments over the last 24 hours suggest the case is approaching a critical stage. Confirmed developments today: law enforcement agencies continue to treat Nancy Guthrie's disappearance as a credible kidnapping investigation. Federal authorities, including the FBI, remain heavily involved alongside the Pima County Sheriff's Department. Officials have not announced any arrests, suspects, or persons of interest, and they have emphasized that the investigation is ongoing and sensitive. One of the most significant developments remains the public statement released by the Guthrie family, in which Nancy's children directly addressed the person or people believed to be responsible for her disappearance and stated their willingness to pay to have their mother returned. Since that video was posted, the family has not released additional public messages. According to crime analysts, this kind of silence often indicates that families are following guidance from law enforcement or are engaged in communications that cannot be made public. Authorities have also continued to decline comment on the late-night law enforcement activity at the home of Nancy Guthrie's daughter, Annie Guthrie, where deputies were seen entering and leaving over the weekend. Investigators have not confirmed the purpose of that visit, only stating that it was part of ongoing investigative work. No search warrants, evidence seizures, or forensic findings have been publicly announced in connection with that activity. Another important confirmed detail is that ransom-related messages sent to media organizations are being taken seriously by investigators. While law enforcement has not verified the authenticity of those messages publicly, multiple outlets have reported that the FBI has asked them to withhold certain information, suggesting the communications are relevant to the investigation. Tucson television station has reported that one of the alleged ransom notes demanded $6 million to be paid in Bitcoin with a stated deadline. Authorities have not confirmed the amount or the deadline, but they have not denied that ransom communications exist. At this time, officials continue to state that there is no confirmed suspect and no named person of interest, and they have urged the public not to speculate or spread unverified claims. What investigators are focused on now today: investigative efforts are believed to be centered on reviewing all digital communications connected to the case, monitoring any activity linked to the reported cryptocurrency wallet, re-examining timelines and movements from the night Nancy Guthrie was last seen coordinating between local, state, and federal agencies. Experts note that in cases involving ransom demands, investigators often avoid public updates to prevent disrupting negotiations or alerting those responsible. What may happen tomorrow is expected to be an important day in the case due to the reported ransom deadline. While authorities have not confirmed whether a deadline exists, investigators typically prepare for several possible scenarios when a case reaches this stage. One possibility is movement related to the ransom demand, such as further communication or instructions. Any activity involving a cryptocurrency wallet linked to the case would immediately draw the attention of federal analysts, as large transactions are visible on the blockchain, even if the identity of the wallet holder is unknown. Another possibility is a law enforcement development, such as the execution of additional warrants, expanded searches, or controlled public messaging. In some cases, authorities delay announcements intentionally while evidence is being verified. There is also the possibility that no public change occurs at all. Investigators often stress that a lack of visible activity does not mean progress is not being made. In high-profile cases, significant developments sometimes remain confidential until a safe resolution is possible. Current status as of now: Nancy Guthrie has not been located. No arrests have been made. The investigation remains active and ongoing. Law enforcement continues to request tips from the public authorities. Continue to urge anyone with credible information to contact the Pima County Sheriff's Department or the FBI directly. Why this moment matters, investigators and experts agree that the coming period is critical. Cases involving ransom demands often reach a turning point around stated deadlines, either through resolution, escalation, or a shift in investigative strategy. For now, the focus remains on finding Nancy Guthrie and ensuring her safety, while authorities work carefully behind the scenes to avoid actions that could put her at risk.